Hey everyone, this is Kevin, the failed journalist. Hey everyone, this is Kevin, your failed journalist, and welcome to another AMC Stubs A-list video. Because I tend to make three types of videos. It seems like I make videos about The Simpsons, I make videos about the MPAA, and I make videos about Movie Pass, Cinemia, those subscription services. Of course, Movie Pass and Cinemia are no longer around. Therefore, we now talk about AMC Stubs A-list and Regal Unlimited and the Cinemark thing, which still exists, I suppose. But anyway, AMC might be in a lot of trouble. They might be in a world of trouble. Now, granted, they've been hurting a little bit for a while. It has been noted in other stories before that AMC has a lot of debt. They racked up a lot of debt while they expanded their movie theater business. They bought more theaters. They developed the Prime experience. They invested in AMC Stubs A-List, which they knew they would take a hit on at first, but would eventually break even. Well, more than break even. They'd eventually thrive because more people sign up and more people buy snacks. Basically, that's what MoviePass wanted to do, but couldn't really do because they didn't own the theaters. But AMC owns the theaters, so they could kind of do that. Well, AMC was starting to look around before everything hit. They were starting. The AMC Stubs A-List thing had finally made them a little bit of money. They, I knew that was coming. The theater attendance was up for them. People were buying more snacks. And then basically the creepy crud hit the air, which we can't talk about or else we'll get demonetized, and the theaters closed. And now AMC might be looking to file for bankruptcy, Chapter 11 specifically. Now then, we don't know for sure if any of this is going to happen. This is just on inside sources. But let me say one thing. If they're filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, that does not necessarily mean they will go under. Chapter 11 bankruptcy means that basically they get to operate while they restructure and figure out how they're going to pay off their debts. And basically the courts decide whether or not there's enough value there for them to stick around. If it's Chapter 7, it's much more dire. That's where they decide to cease operations. That's what MoviePass decided to do. They didn't even try to restructure. Probably going to show just how much of a mess that ended up being in the long run. And, full disclosure, I do have stock in AMC Theaters, so I'm obviously looking at this with rose-tinted glasses, and if they go under, I'm sure there'll be a lot of jokes about, hey, you invested in the Movie Pass, and now you invested in AMC as well. Well, I'm also invested in Cinemark and Disney and Microsoft and Google. You keep your portfolio widely invested just in case things like this happen, but I'm still, even though I've got a little bit of a bias, clearly, I feel like there's still a light at the end of the tunnel. I think they ultimately will reopen, and I'll probably maybe I'll explain why. I just think people are itching to get back to the theaters. I mean, even the people who for years were saying, I just want to stream everything, now that they're actually stuck at home and have to stream everything, a lot of them are kind of going like, man, what I wouldn't give to go see a Wonder Woman movie in the theaters again. But anyway, let's look at this article. From Market Watch. This is the New York Post, really, through Market Watch, and it opens not even beating around the bush. AMC Entertainment is inching closer to a possible bankruptcy. The largest U.S. movie theater chain, whose cinema houses have been shuttered nationwide since mid-March because of the C virus epidemic, is in talks to hire law firm Whale, Gotchell, and Manges, I hope I pronounced that right, to explore a potential Chapter 11 filing, the Post has learned. Weil Gotchell's team is headed up by lawyer Ray Schrock, who lately has worked as bankruptcy counsel to California utility PG&E, the Fairway supermarket chain, and retail icon Sears Holding, many of whose stores got overtaken by billionaire Eddie Lampert. Now then, I do want to make a note here. It might not be a strong note considering Sears is one of the companies listed here, but all three of those companies are still in business long after they filed for bankruptcy. Granted, I don't think Sears has a whole lot of hope left. I think they are definitely going under. I do not own stock in Sears, by the way. Never thought it was a good investment, but there you go. So that's going to give you a little of an illustration, really, that Chapter 11 does not necessarily mean the end. It doesn't mean like, okay, once they file, they're officially not reopening their doors. No, AMC could still reopen their doors while they're under Chapter 11. So anyway, the insider cautioned that it's early stages and that it's not clear whether the theater chain has hired any other advisors for the possible restructuring. Nevertheless, a bankruptcy filing looks increasingly likely as the company has already begun to skip rent across its locations, according to the source. And early stages make sense because here's another thing about this whole thing, for at least, and again, I'm not a financial expert, I'm not a lawyer, so take this with a grain of salt, but from what one of my friends who deals with bankruptcy has told me, like, they would, if they were going to file, they would probably wait as long as they could to file because basically you file too soon. Like if they file today and the theaters can't open for 3 months, well, that 3 months can be critical. And in that 3 months, the courts can look like you're not making any money whatsoever. And they might say, shutter it. But let's say they wait 2 months, like just before the theaters can start reopening, and they file for it. Well, they can show that, hey, they're reopening the theaters, they're starting to bring money back in, they're starting to sell off some locations, and they might actually be able to. So timing is everything in all of this. But as the source says, you don't hire Ray unless you are filing. You're not going to hire them at their hourly rate to have a beer with them. So here's the thing. Last week, AMC's lenders all hired law firm Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher to advise the chain on a possible restructuring. As reported by the Post, expert noted that AMC, which has a debt load of $4.9 billion, is at risk of breaching its debt covenants as it burns through cash amid the crisis that is currently unfolding. And so, yeah, AMC is definitely looking at options because they're hurting. They've got this debt. And again, they normally wouldn't. The reason they have the debt is because they spent a lot of money expanding, improving their theaters, doing AMC Stubs A-list, and just as they were finally starting to make some money from all that investment, this hit. It was just really bad timing. And obviously, AMC also stopped paying their rent. However, they said AMC is willing to discuss with you any suggestions you may have for getting through this crisis and planning for when AMC can reopen and pay rent. Now, here's the thing. It's not clear how many theaters AMC would seek to close in bankruptcy, although the 275 lower-priced Carmike locations it acquired in 2016 for $1.1 billion are said to be among the laggards. Like, see, that's where some of the money went. With many of AMC movie theaters housed inside malls, analysts wondered how AMC would be able to roar back to life once the quarantines begin to lift. Malls are all shut down, the source said. They will be the last to open. And you know what? That's another thing to mention why the landlords at the malls might be a little bit more lenient on the rent. And things like this could make a world of difference depending on whether or not they want to file for bankruptcy. Like, if they could get like a bunch of landlords to basically either forgive the rent or make some concessions in the rent, which I think a lot of them will have to do because landlords are, yeah, they're in a bad position too, but they can't just evict all of their tenants because they're not paying rent when the businesses can't even be open. Like, when it's time to reopen, they won't have anyone. They might have to start making some concessions like, okay, you're hurting a little bit, so I'm going to hurt this much so that we can stay in business together. If enough of them do that, AMC might not need to file bankruptcy, or the bankruptcy might be less painful and might be more swift in reopening and getting out of it than it otherwise would be. And especially since AMC theaters anchor a lot of malls. Like, there's some malls that the only reason we go to them is because there's an AMC theater there, and then we eat dinner and maybe we do a little shopping afterwards. Otherwise, we would not go to the mall anymore. That's one thing that online shopping has changed. I don't go to malls for fun anymore because it's like the idea of like going to a mall and then walking in the middle of the mall to go to a store is like kind of an archaic thing now. I'd much rather go to its own store where I can walk in and walk out. But yeah, if they close those anchors, I wouldn't go to those malls, and I think a lot of landlords know that. So anyway, one of the reasons that they also highlight a concern for AMC's is China, because China started to reopen movie theaters and restaurants. However, as they've pointed out here, every third seat is occupied in China, and they are taking customers' temperatures. I believe something similar like that would happen here. And another issue for all the movie theaters is the backlog of production. Most major studios have delayed the summer releases of their biggest summer blockbusters like Mulan, Fast and Furious 9, and the James Bond flick No Time to Die. So why would people want, to reopen when there's no movies to show? And like, why would Warner Brothers want to release Wonder Woman 84 when only every third seat can be sold? And it's a concern to be had. But let me share what might happen. First of all, when it comes to reopening the theaters, I suspect the studios will get together and they will come with a deal with AMC. I know in China, and granted the government instituted this, so it might be a little different here, they made it so that they would show a bunch of classic movies and the theaters would keep all the money, all the ticket money, which has never happened before. So in America, there might be something similar. You'll start seeing Gladiator, Back to the Future, Jaws, Lord of the Rings, Titanic. Avatar. You're gonna start seeing those return to theaters, and the theaters will keep the vast bulk of the ticket money, if not all the ticket money. So that would help stem the losses, and that would also help get people comfortable again with going back to the theater, seeing an old favorite on the big screen. And once the theaters have less of a leash on them, that's when you can have a Wonder Woman or a Tenet or something really major come out. I also suspect they might require masks. Like, I think they will require gloves and masks, and if you don't have them with you when you show up, you can buy them. They'll take your temperature, of course. If you've got a temperature, you're going home. You're not entering the theater. So there are things they can do that I think will help them cash with their strapped cash. Now, the biggest question, of course, is will AMC Stubs A-List stick around? Because do you want people to be going to unlimited movies when you're strapped for cash? And granted, I really love the Stubs A-List. I would really hate for it to go away. And I admit, I might not go to AMC theaters as much if they did take this away. So clearly I'm biased on this. But I'm going to cautiously and optimistically say I think the Stubs A-List is probably going to be more important to AMC than ever for a couple of reasons. First of all, they do have, I think, do they have like 1 million subscribers, or they have a few 100,000 subscribers at the very least? Because most people did not cancel their Stubs A-List. It just got put on hold. But those people that are still around, when they can reopen, they're all going to get charged the subscription fee. And that will be instant money in AMC's pocket right from the get-go. It's a good look, especially if you're filing for bankruptcy. Here's the other thing. Now those people have paid, they are most likely going to show up to the theaters, and those are the people who will be itching to go back to the theaters the most, and they will be buying the snacks. So that's going to help with their attendance quite a bit. So now it might temporarily be you can only see 2 movies a week as opposed to 3, and that would although I think AMC might, I don't know, would they take that away? Because that would just make people cancel. I don't know. That's like the big question mark. But that's a good way to get people back into the theaters and maybe buying snacks and stuff. AMC Stubs members are proven to be the most prolific snack buyers. Heck, we even buy snacks that we normally would not buy. You might also start seeing some deals with this concessions. Like, hey, if you buy a popcorn, you get a drink for free. The popcorn and soda is like a 1,000% markup. So if they did that, you know what? My wife and I, we usually buy like a large drink, and that's it. But hey, if we get a free popcorn with it, yeah, we might buy 2 large drinks. Both get like a free little small popcorn, both get our own flavor. You never know. So I think the AMC Stubs A-List will probably stick around a little bit longer. I think they invested way too much money into that. It's a good way to just get a bunch of cash right up front from their most frequent and ardent movie lovers. It will get them back into the theaters. They will most likely buy snacks. So I think that's going to be key to them, to getting people back into the theaters. So I also, by the way, expect like when these classic movies come out, especially if AMC gets to keep the entire ticket price, you might see some temporary discounts on the tickets for the everyday moviegoer. So that's my personal thought on the matter. Who knows what's actually going to happen at this point? I do believe the theaters will reopen. Whether or not they will survive the year, that's another question altogether. But I think once this thing lifts, people will want to be going to the movies again. They'll want to be going out. And, you know, we have been starving for, like, really a good big budget release. I can, by the way, see a great headline, because I think August is when a lot of the theaters will be able to work at full capacity again. I can imagine like that weekend being the weekend where the restrictions are lifted. Wonder Woman comes out, sold out screenings everywhere. People are seeing it in 3D, IMAX, 4DX, every format possible, and the headline like Wonder Woman saves the movie theaters. I could see a headline like that. That would be a great headline for us to have. But we'll have to ultimately see what happens. In the meantime, what do you folks think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.